let's move on to the final part of this lecture, exception. So what is an exception? An exception is an event which occurs during the execution of a program that disrupts the normal flow of the program instruction. In general, when a Python script encounters a situation that it cannot cope with, it raises an exception and stops the executions immediately. Python provides a special object for exception that represents this unexpected event. With the exception object, we can handle the unexpected event when it occurs and keep our code running well without interrupting. I will show you an example of exception. Uh, Here, for example, you have a list of number 1, 2, and 3. For example, so you when you try to accept like the value at index 4, for example, is you will see an index error, like is list index outrank. This is because the length of the list here is 3, but you accept the index 4, so it raises an index. It's not found in the sequence. Another example is that when you open the file that do not exist, open the file to read, but it doesn't exist in your system. Let's say you open the data.txt with the reading mode, for example. So you will see here the file not found error. No such file or directory data.txt, because you see here in this folder that you don't see the data.txt file. So that means you will see the final file error. It raises when you try to open a file that did not exist. I strongly recommend you to read the textbook for detailed information about other exceptions. Here you will see the many different exceptions. The first line in the table is exception. This is the base class for all other exceptions below. This is also a base class for you to define your own exception. In this lecture, we will do some practicing with index error, this one, and the file not found errors, this one. For the others, you can try yourself using the same way we do in this lecture. Okay, let's see how to handle an exception. Here is a template for exception handling in Python. You have the try block where you write the code may cause exceptions. Then you follow by one or many exception blocks where you handle the exception events, and the else block is executed if there is no exception happen. So here, let's say I have an example. I have the try block. I want to open a text file. Open the data.txt in reading mode. For example, you know already that this will throw an exception like the final file, right? And I catch accept file not found error here, and the comma and the new block. In this block, I would like to handle the exception, and I want to print out on the screen that the Python cannot open the file because it did not exist. Okay, and I would like to have an else block here. So in this block I will print out the code in the child block. Work well and no exception happen. Okay, here, yeah, okay, you see, you know that this live code will have an exception, the final file error. So you think that this one will execute, right? Yeah, that's correct. Then you try to execute it. So you will see here this live code is executed. So this the exception occur. So that means, so here this line will print out on the screen. So what if you create a file, for example here you create the data.txt file and you can write something here, and you now you have the data.txt file here, right? Then you execute the code again and you will see this else block is executed. So now the exception does not occur, does not exist. So the file is now is exit. So the exception is not occur. So here you see the else block is executed. Okay. When you do something, your code may cause some exception, and you don't want to handle it right here, and you need to raise the exception for the caller to handle it. You can follow the following example to raise an exception. Something like you have a function adding two number, the A and the B, and inside the function you check the how to say, you check the sum if it's larger than a limit value, and you set that it's cannot accept the maximum value, like A plus B is larger than 10, for example, and you raise an exception, value error, the sum except the maximum value. So because you don't want to add the sum larger than 10, for example, so then if you there's no exception, the condition is work well, you raise you return the sum, return the A and plus B. So that is a function we define. Then when you call the function like with 2 and 3, for example, you will see 5, right? And even here you can 6, it's 8, right? It's okay, right? But when you, for example, here you have 5 and 6, you will see the value error here. You will see the sum except the maximum value. So that is one way you can create your own exception in your code. You can also create your own exception based on the base class. In the textbook there is an example of how to create user-defined exception. I encourage you to spend some time to do it yourself. Actually there are many advanced things with exception and handling exceptions. In this course, I just try to give you the brief introduction about the concept of exception and the easiest way to handle it. Hope you find it interesting and continue your learning path in the future.